also we have a voice speaking on behalf of policy. So for academia, help me invite to the stage Professor Mary Abukotsa. Professor Abukotsa is a Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Production and Extension at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Karibu sana, Professor. Let's give a good round of applause. Okay. Let's also welcome Mr. Harry Wangi. Mr. Wangi is the Director, Agriculture, Research and Innovation at the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Karibu sana, Mr. Wangi. Thank you for being with us for this session. Let's also welcome Dr. Barack Okoba. Dr. Okoba is the Head of Resilience and Food Systems at FAO. Many thanks for joining us for this session this afternoon. Right, so as I mentioned, we'll have this discussion for some minutes and then open it up for any questions that you may have for any of the panelists or any comments that you may have and any issue that you feel needs to be addressed as we continue with this conference for the next 3 days. So agriculture is a major driver of economy in Kenya. It contributes to about 51% of the gross domestic product in Kenya. And just recognizing the importance that this sector has to the country's economic development, the Ministry of Agriculture recently launched the Agricultural Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy, a strategy that is supposed to be steering every action that the country takes for the next 4 years to 2022 to make sure that all households in the country are both food and nutrition secure. And I'm very happy that we have Mr. Wangi here, who is the Director for Innovation and Research at the Ministry, to talk about this, shed more light on this strategy. And maybe you can start by talking to us about how this strategy, the agricultural strategy, for transformation and growth strategy, how is it supposed to ensure that it aligns with the Big Four agenda and that by 2022, all Kenyans are 100% nutritional and food secure? Mr. Wangi.
Oh, thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you now and maybe address agriculture. Agriculture, we have all along said, is the backbone of this country. We have done it for the last 50 years as a country, and we have realized if we continue doing it the way we are doing, we shall never be able to feed this country. We anticipate by the year 2050, the population of this country will have doubled, and in that case, we should be able to produce above what we produce by 70%. When the government realized this, through our ministry, we devised a strategy that first will transform the way we are doing agriculture, a strategy that will drive production and productivity of this country to new levels. We have all along depended on grain-fed agriculture, which we already realized through those methods we cannot be able to feed our country. We have also realized that 80% of our farmers are small-scale farmers, holding less than 2 acres of land. In those small-scale farms, we can barely be able to do mechanization. We have also realized that we without large-scale farming in this country, we may not feed this country. The PS who was here before me stressed the kind of direction we need to move. Adopting technologies, being innovative, and also not relying on rain. We have tried irrigation in those schemes. We have seen them fail. We should move away from that and be able to have the private sector doing it. The country loses between 25 and 30% of our produce. This is post-harvest losses, cutting across both livestock and crops. So we need to do it differently. And that's why we came up with a strategy that will address the farmer, the inputs, and the post-harvest. We are also looking at the value chains. Every value chain must be addressed. And addressing the value chains, we shall create jobs for our youth. Any of our citizens can be able to enter the value chain at whatever level. Production, processing, distribution, and so forth. As a country, we are also aligning the strategy to the Big Four. And I must say, if we address agriculture, food production, crop production rather, we can be able to address the four agendas. Through the Big Four, if we supported agriculture properly, and if our agriculture was functioning, we can be able to address manufacturing through the various crops that go to the industry. We can also have a healthy nation. We can be food secure. We can increase the incomes of our people. And this will go reflecting on, to have a spiral effect. So I'm glad that we are talking about agriculture today. And we have a strategy that is aligned to the Big Four. The government has already realized we can do it differently. And I would rather say that if we support agriculture, nutrition will be addressed, manufacturing will be addressed, and also the wealth of this country. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Mwangi. And just noting that with regard to this agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy, I hope you are noting down any questions. Mr. Mwangi has said it addresses every approach from production to processing to value addition, but is it from where you sit as a stakeholder? Is it are there specific needs that this strategy is addressing or can address better? Let's have that healthy conversation as we continue. And Professor Abugutsa, there is a great potential that has been spoken about with regard to value addition in terms of exports for our foods, and in terms of also just expanding the shelf lives of some of the products that we have. Would you say that some of the agricultural programs that we have existing in schools now address such needs or such existing potentials for agro-processing? Or how are you supporting this existing opportunity?
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Yes, as we have been introduced, I'm from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, representing academia, research, and both public and private, because we have common approaches to our contribution to food security and nutrition. Now, if I want to address the question that Sharon has asked me, at the university, that is at my university, JK Watt, and other public universities like Egerton University, University of Nairobi, and other universities, Moi University, every university, we have various programs that are geared towards addressing or training students in the area of food, agriculture and food security and nutrition. So what we have at the university is we have various programs that train students in various areas along value chain, starting from looking at the soil. We have areas that focus on soil health, and how we can look at the soil that it gives highest productivity. Then we have an area that looks at development of new varieties, this genetics, breeding, which is also an area that is being focused on by various universities in Kenya that are teaching areas of agriculture and related disciplines. And then we have production agronomies. We have agronomy courses. This basically looks at production. And then we do not stop there. We look at now, when you have the production of food, we find out that we sensitize the students in such a way that how you grow the crop affects the shelf life. So depending on how you grow the crop, pre-harvest conditions are areas that we focus on, and post-harvest conditions and value addition. In that aspect, we focus on also on the production, harvesting, processing, and then we have courses like food processing and also post-harvest preservation, both at my university, JK1, Egerton, and University of Nairobi. So, in a nutshell, we are looking actually at various aspects of food production from the farm to the plate. Needless to add, we also have processes or programs that look at how do we now prepare these foods that by the time it reaches the table, it still has value and also nutrition. So some of the programs that we have are very popular, especially the processing one. We have food nutrition and technology, they are very popular. But when we come now to the agricultural aspect of the production, we have observed that many of our young people are not very keen on taking up these programs. So we need to find a way that we must make these programs popular, because as a nation, we must train young people who can play a part, not just the processing but the production, because I tell the students that before you process, you must grow it. And we have put in place many interventions to help the young people to, just from high school, to like choose agriculture as a subject or as a career. And some of the interventions we have taken as universities, particularly giving examples of JK1, we go to schools and we popularize and talk about our programs. Even as I speak now, we have an agenda out there with the programs in agriculture, so the young people who are here can go there and pick the programs. Two, we also try to bring in technologies, because agriculture is not just about old people with a djembe and growing food, which don't, but we have other technologies. We have programs that we encourage young people to develop technologies under subject like Tech Expo, where we encourage the young people to develop applications, and they have been doing with very innovative things. So embracing technology will ensure that young people can be able to take up agriculture without much problem. In addition, I want to add that as universities, we cannot work alone. We need to work together with other partners. And I want to give an example of JK1 and Egerton University. We talk about our technologies in agriculture in the media, and we have partnered with, for example, JK1 has partnered with the Standard Group Media, and then Egerton has partnered with the Nation Media. On Saturdays, we have the 6th of Gold for Egerton University, and we have Smart Harvest and Technology. And I want to confirm that since we signed a contract with the Standard Media in 2018, we have seen a significant increase in students choosing, not just in quite more, choosing agriculture. So we have many other things we need to do. Policy makers, we need to look at it and see how do we make agriculture attractive, because the average farmer in Kenya is about over 60 years. But we need to embrace the young people to be able to take up. So these things are things we need to talk about, not just from the academia's point of point of view. Even parents, how many of us parents do we encourage our children to do agriculture? Many of us want them to be doctors, but my argument is whether you're a doctor, president, whatever you are, you must eat. So to me, the number one profession is agriculture. So we must address it at all levels in schools, in as parents, and also at all levels, policy and media.
Thank you, Prof. And just from your remarks, I've done a 1+1 calculation, and if you're saying that about 51% of Kenya's GDP is from agriculture, and the average farmer is about 6 years old, and the larger population of the country is the young people, it means really that hashtag farming is cool and taking it down to the young people is extremely important, right? And all those strategies that we've talked about are absolutely very important. Many thanks, Prof. And Dr. Barak, the battle to end hunger and poverty must be taken to the rural areas of our country. And you'll see in the rural areas, households that are primarily agricultural are less often poor. So very important there. Maybe talk to us about some of the investments that FAO has positioned in the counties just to support agricultural productivity and to enhance food and nutrition security in Kenya.
Thank you very much. Let me use English. I can also use Kiswahili fluently. But to answer this question, especially the FAO investment in the rural areas, when it concerns the issues of food security, I really want to start this discussion by telling you that FAO as an organization of the UN, an agency of the UN, which is a skill-based UN organization, envisions a world that is free of hunger and of course malnutrition. That is our mandate. And when we are talking of a world free of hunger and malnutrition, we want to address it through supporting development of food and agriculture in the rural areas and of course in various countries. We want to improve the standards of all, especially the poor, who are likely to face the challenges of sufficient food. And as FAO, we stand at a position that we have an advantage, a position of advantage. We have the knowledge and we are global. And therefore, we always see that that pivotal position will help us address issues across different countries and in different social strata. So, with regard to FAO support the rural poor or the rural people, we, based on the events that have been occurring, one, as many have spoken before me, is our issues of climate change. Climate change is exposing us to crisis and threat, and that technically means that the rural poor are likely, or not likely, but they are going to face food insecurity. They are going to be food insecure, and basically that means issues of nutrition will come in. So FAO has been addressing these things steadily, looking at other countries, how they overcome this same challenge, and bringing it down to Kenya. And we work with the national government and other strategic partners to make sure that the issues of nutrition are addressed. And investment is either singularly by FAO or FAO partners like USA, EU, and others, and the government, of course, is the biggest funder on the ideas we are giving. So, in realizing that FAO has invested knowledge or the skills to the rural poor, and these skills are around increased productivity to make sure that there is sufficient food through climate resilient practices. like conservation agriculture, we had the PS talk about that, or overall aspects of climate smart agriculture. FAO is not only supporting those skills, but it's trying to, through the government, to demonstrate how can farmers be food secure, and how can they also diversify the options that they have at hand. So our investment is both in skills and also in hardware, where equipment on demonstrating on how best to dry, package the foods, and especially where we are increasingly supporting farmers or Kenyans to make sure that their food is well composed. I know together with the government, there is a food composition table, recipe book. These are just among many other things that we are supporting the rural poor to make sure that they are secure. I also need to let you know that because of the exposure we have, we are not only, to diseases and outbreaks of some other nutrition-related problems. FAO did a pilot study in 3 cities across the world to look at the food systems of urban and rural areas. And we did a pilot of Nairobi, a case of Nairobi, and just to understand what is the food system and how is Nairobi County handling it. And we looked, when we talk of food system, we are looking at both social, economic, natural resource management aspect of it, from production all the way to the table or to the dining place. And we realized that Nairobi does not have even a food system strategy. And up to now, we are actually supporting them to do that. That was the first phase. Then the second phase of our work, we extended to make sure that Nairobi can assure you of food that is secure. We are now working in both Nairobi and Kisumu to make sure that these 2 cities, if we can demonstrate that they can provide their residents or the residents of these cities with good food that is clean and safe, then I think we will have supported the government to focus. So basically those are the kind of skill sets we are providing and trying to demonstrate that the rural poor are not exposed to the vulnerability that comes with climate change.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Barak. And if you have any questions regarding, climate resilient farming and strategies, very important conversation. We'll be having that as we proceed. And Mr. Mwangi, some of the challenges faced in the country in the agricultural sector include poor handling, of food produce that is post-harvesting. And there's really, what has been said is that there's a poor state of infrastructure to support post-harvest, as well as lack of systems for price discovery, which then leads to small-scale farmers being exploited while trying to market their produce. This new strategy that was just launched, that is the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy, how does it envision to shield the small-scale farmers in terms of those kind of exploitation and also to support them for post-harvest of their produce?
Thank you very much. As lightly you have put it, the agricultural sector in Kenya has a compound of challenges. One, production. When we compare the level of production, current levels of production, and the potential of this country, there is a very big divergence. It's very big. The production and potential is low. You have also said that the population, the farming community of this country, the age, they are elderly. We are also challenged by low agro-processing of our products. The soil health of this country Over the years, we have been growing same crops. So the issue of the soil health, and also the poor marketing infrastructure and knowledge. So as the strategy cautions the small-scale farmers by producing technology. When I say technology, we are talking of crop varieties and also the kind of breeds that our farmers are going to have. We have this big institution in this country we call CARO, leading research in this country. We want them to produce varieties that will be drought tolerant, that will be productive, producing more than the current varieties. We are also looking at the breeds of the animals that we have in this country. A farmer holding a Frisian cow that is producing less than 7 liters of milk, he cannot break even. So what we are saying, we want the farmers to do it commercially. We want the farmers to grow high value crops on their farms. Let not just talk about maize and beans. As my PS said, we should remove the pressure from the maize by doing something different. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that, Mwangi. And Professor Abukutsa, there's a lot that modern technology can do to take agriculture anywhere in the world, and we're talking about our context here in Kenya, to the next level, from predicting weather to talking to farmers about access to finances, and credit, to providing driving, logistical inefficiencies, a lot that this can be done. Would you say that our academic programs are building capacity for this market-based innovation and adoption of agro-based technologies?
Okay, thank you very much, Sharon, for the question. Academia, we are actually, as I had said earlier, we have programs that build capacity. Now, at the university, or any other university in Kenya or in the world, we are actually supposed to create knowledge, disseminate knowledge, and if possible, make money out of that knowledge. Now, in terms of creating knowledge, we have research. In addition, or to complement CALRO, whom we collaborate with, as my colleague has said, universities actually are areas that knowledge are manufactured, more so because of not just staff, the academic staff, but also students who actually undertake this research as their training at postgraduate level. Now, out of this training, we come up with technologies at all levels. And I must add that even at undergraduate, they come up with technologies that can solve the existing problems. So I'll give an example. For example, JKUAT, we have about 50 technologies that we have developed, and we have patented over around that number. But the question is, this technology you have developed, how much is reaching the end user? And how do we ensure that that technology is reaching the end user? I remember sometimes back, we had agriculture sector a conference, I think here in 2012, and we were told that the weakest point within Kenya and Africa maybe is that the few technology we have developed at the research institutions, at academic institutions, are lying on the shelf. So that is one of the things that we need to focus on. And of course, some of the universities are already doing that. Some of the universities are actually linking up with other partners, with the ministries, to be able to translate this information in a usable form by the end users, to translate this information, technologies and research outputs into policy, and also to translate this information into commercial products. So from where I sit, of course, there's still much to be done in terms of developing technology and innovations. But I would like us to focus, if we look at all the universities, all the research institutions, let's see how much of the innovations, technologies that have been developed are being used out there. And how do we do that? And that's where we come in with partnership. We have to partner such a way that whatever we have at the university, we are able to translate that in a way that it is being used. That's a very weak point, and that's when our now other partners come in. We work with NGOs, we work with development partners, we work with the media, as I said earlier, to ensure some of these technologies end up with the farmer or the policy or whoever wants to use it. Now, having said that, we also observe that we need to process our products or our produce. It has been in the past that many of our products are taken out, if I give an example of coffee or tea, without being processed. But with our training, we are putting a lot of emphasis on technology, post-harvest technology development, that is post-harvest technology, how to create or how to value add all our products in such a way that we can be able to sell high value products. It is a journey we have started, and I think all of us also have to support, and I'm happy that the strategy, the agriculture sector transformation and growth strategy has been very strong in that area. And some of us, even academia, were part of that strategy, where we were saying that we must ensure that we are not producing just raw materials for other countries. We must add value so that these products that come from Kenya or Africa as such are being produced and value added to a level that they do not need to be reprocessed to be sold to us. So it's an area that we are focusing on, not only as training, but also in research and coming up with technologies on how some of these things can be done.
Thank you very much, Prof. And you've mentioned a very important gap, that from knowledge and innovation to the end user. I think that distance between those two, from innovation to usability, is where the money is, right? So very important to tap into this available opportunities and commercialize, which then helps everybody around. And we're about to get into the open session where we're getting comments and questions, so just stand by for that. And we'll be having microphones. Just go around. If you have a question or a comment, you'll be raising your hand. Introduce yourself, and then the microphone will come to you. And Dr. Barak, just to talk about, you'd mentioned, and I know you have a comment to add to that, on climate resilience. In the face of where we're going through, climate change and all that, we talk about climate resilient techniques. I don't know how much of these techniques actually the farmers know, and I know this is part of the things that as FAO you are doing, but maybe you can talk to us about some of the methods and approaches that small-scale farmers can use, in a bid to be more sustainable in the face of climate change.
Yes. Even before you asked the question, I wanted to respond, or because we are a team, especially as a government or as Kenyans, when it comes to food security. I think we produce a lot of food. Only that, as Professor Mboga has been asking in other forums and even today, where is the statistics? We even don't know how many farmers are in Kenya. And as long as we don't have those numbers, we can talk about technologies, we can talk about policies, but those policies must be translated into action, and we must know that ni wakulima wangapi wako Kenya, ni wangapi wamelala njaa siku ya leo. I decided to do a study recently. She's talked about technologies, she talked about farmers becoming more commercial. I believe Kenyan farmers are very resilient. I believe Kenyan farmers are desire to be commercial. Si ni ukweli? Kila mkulima wa Kenya anataka kuwa mwanabiashara, na ndio unaona wengi wamekuja na wamedisplay vile vitu wako nazo. but we must provide enabling environment. For me, let's not look at the government. Let us look at the private sector. The government, as my boss reminds us and all of you know, government is to put in policies, not to provide free lunch or whatever, to provide an environment, an enabling environment for investors to come. This study we carried out recently in 5 counties, that is Tharaka-Nithi, Makueni, Machakos, Kitui, I think Taita Taveta. And my question was, are we really food insecure? And we did this study, we are in September, early this year. And we asked ourselves, how much of the food we produce actually end up in our stores or in the supermarket or at home? And of course, we did a random selection of those farmers. We know they are farmers, not like me who claims to be a farmer, but I even don't know what was planted yesterday. And we've followed 3 food crops. We tracked down how much of these 120 farmers in each county, how much of tomatoes they produce, how much of kales they produce, how much of French beans in some counties they produce, how much of bananas they produce. I forget the 5th one. And we tracked from production all the way where she could or he could take it. And amazing. Farmers produce a lot of tomatoes. Yes, tomatoes was one of them. They produce a lot of kales, but there is a lot of loss. Though I was not targeting watermelon, but I came across somewhere in Machakos near the dams where young people have put in every resource they have. They have produced a lot of watermelon. The roads are impassable. Boda guys or piki guys come and buy that watermelon. I buy here at 300, at 5 bob, 50 bob, or something like that. The much of the losses on tomatoes was huge, not because most of it found itself in the market, but the transport was poor. The farmers decided, let it rot on my farm. I'm looking at a picture here, which I cannot project. All these tomatoes are transported when they are, I don't know, my experts are here, they are overly ripe. That by the time they are stored in these crates and they reach the market, they are all crushed and 3/4 of it. Amazing numbers. We identified that during that season, that period, the tomato loss was up to, across the 600 farmers we mapped, they were losing up to 60% of the tomatoes they produced. We calculated across those counties to ask ourselves, how much is foregone income to these farmers? It was in billions of shillings. I went further and I projected from county and looked at what is the potential of tomato production countrywide. And that money, if we saved it, we could run this economy without borrowing anywhere. What am I trying to say? Let's let the government provide enabling environment that these farmers, the young people who are moving into agriculture, will produce and be assured of reaching the market. And that's why the aspect of drying on site will increase the value of those tomatoes. Instead of you relying on technology that we have researched on, that is sitting on our shelves, and yet private sector could actually support these farmers. You know? And that's why through with private partners, private sector, we are bringing in the global gap aspect. So that the farmers in Makueni, Tharaka-Nithi and Machakos are producing tomatoes they know they are going to sell to a certain market in Europe or a certain market in Kenya. And private sector or financial institutions like KCB have come in with models that will make sure that these farmers are not discouraged. So, ladies and gentlemen, what am I trying to say? That as we talk of resilience, we are not just talking of technologies but even infrastructure that is resilient to the floods and the rains and the drought. We are talking of resilience of crops that with 300 millimeters in Laikipia, they will be able to produce their crop, as Professor Mboga has said. Let us not cheat ourselves that the rains are not enough. There could be variability, but as Bishop Masika says, Wakenya hawajui mambo ya maji. They always complain of the rain. When it is raining, when there is no rain, that's the only complaint. Yet, there is a lot of water that is flowing. So resilience to droughts can be addressed. And so, without really escaping the question, the point is that let's bring in the private sector to play their due role, and these farmers will be encouraged and they will produce, because every Kenyan farmer wakes up and goes to the farm to make sure that their food can reach me in Nairobi. We need to put in systems of traceability, that I'm eating what I know or where it came from. Some farmers from Makueni, I interacted with them in other forum, and because they have been traded in the issues of global gap, they are very sensitive. They will not eat vegetables where they don't know who produced it. And all of us in Nairobi, we are faced with this crisis. And in urban cities, do you know what you are eating? For how long has it been in the truck? How was it packaged from the farm to... So the technologies are there. Resilience will start with the research, where we have resilient seeds, resilience of infrastructure, resilience of... So I do not want to list off the technologies because you know all of them, but I think let's stimulate, let's encourage, especially the young people and the mothers and the people who want to move into agriculture, to know that it's an employment and it is a place to be at such a time like this, when hopefully we have reached 60 million. I don't know, but when the results come out, Mr. Mwangi has a daunting task to make sure that we are all food secure. That's all I can say.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Barak. Very practical picture that you've painted there of what we are looking at when we are saying resilience, when you're talking about resilience, not just to climate, but also infrastructure that is resilient, to shocks. And we want to open it up now for questions, comments, so that we can have an interactive session as we go. You can shoot your question to any of the panelists. If you have a policy-related question, and I think everyone seated here, I know, Prof, you have a very good background in agriculture. So do you have any questions as of now? And then, okay, we can start with this one at the front as we go. Just introduce yourself and direct the question.
Hello, this is Dr. Chike Itoromo, Chief of some Medical Services, Baringo County, representing CC of Health Baringo County. First comment, the panel was not complete. They should have been a medical doctor. Now, I'm a medical doctor personally, with masters in public health, MPCHB UN. I have masters in tropical medicine, Heidelberg. I'm about to clear PhD in public health in Cheke UAT, where you come from, Professor Mary. I only went slow when they wanted to decrease or refuse all the PhDs of Cheke UAT. Now the question is, we seem to be talking about quantity, not quality. Now, when you talk about vitamins, this is a real problem. Micronutrients and vitamins. You talk about vitamin A, which is actually called retinol. Deficiency will lead to self-thalmia, otherwise called night blindness. P1, thiamine. B2, riboflavin. B5, pentothamine. B12, cyanocobalamin. Deficiency will lead to pernicious anemia. Now, C, ascorbic acid. You talk of scurvy. Hello? D1, D2. What we call, there is the active form. Of course, D1, D2, D3. There is E, alpha, beta, and gamma tocopherol. There is, we talk of vitamin H, biotin. we seem not to be talking about this. Micronutrients. You should be talking about zinc. You should be talking about iron, manganese, copper, among others. We are doing very well. When you look at the agri-nutritional conference, we seem to be talking about the agriculture, but where the problem is, deficiency syndromes doesn't seem to come on very well. Now, off the cup, let me say this, that it is a good presentation, but without a medical doctor there, I think we have somebody from farm, we have somebody from agriculture, we have somebody from research, KUAT, where I'm doing my PhD. The panel is not complete without a medical doctor. It is just an observation. Thank you.
Maybe I can just address that, because I should have actually said that this particular, that we'll have a number of panels going forward, was addressing food production and food security, but we will have another panel that will address that. That's a very good and important observation, because we are talking about agro-nutrition, so very keen, and we will be having that conversation. Asante sana, Doctor. Just pick them.
My name is Onyango. I come from Maseno University, but I'm going to talk as a chairman of a National Rice Technical Committee. My comments was on a contribution from the PS and the gentleman in charge of research. The problem we have in Kenya is not that we have smallholder farmers. The evidence is, I've been in the rice industry. We started developing the increasing rice production from 2008 to 2018. At 2008, the production from irrigation schemes was 54,000 metric tons. And our target was to double that one. By 2018, using the smallholder farmers, we had increased the rice production in Kenya from 54 to 160,000 metric tons. So it is doable. So the thinking that it is only large-scale farmers which can do it is not there. My surprise is that the PS confessed here the Kenya government only votes about 3%. According to Malabo Protocol, which was signed by the African government, they agreed that they were going to increase the funding in agriculture to 10%. We are at 3%. We cannot blame the climate. We cannot blame the farmers. The problem is that the funding in agriculture is very, very low. Unless we do something about it, we are not going to go anywhere. It is heartening to hear it from the PS himself, saying that by 2025, Kenya will be relying on imported food at 50 or 52%. And I heard him, I don't know whether I heard him right, saying that in that case, it will be cheaper to import food rather than grow food. I've never seen any nation in the world which relies on import. That way, we are not going to reach where we are. On the rice, the evidence-based, because I think that's what we are talking about. We have just developed another strategic plan running from 2019 to 2030. And our projections are, if we increase the acreage, we put more money in irrigation, we encourage the farmers and give them the market, then we are going to break even in the rice production by 2030.
Right.
Producing about 1 million. So what we are talking about here, Madam Moderator, is that as a government, we must put money where we want the production to increase.
Fantastic. I think that's clear, Onyango, so that we can take more questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosemary. I just want to echo what he said, but for the PS, I think he said that is the reality if we do not change what we are doing. So that is why we have to do new technologies so that we don't get to import food at 52%. Yeah.
Right, thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Dr. Alice, I'll take your comment or question after we go to the middle row. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
So I have a comment related to what the PS presented and related to what Ms. Onyanga has spoken about. Because in the strategy, it seems that you want to focus more on the large-scale farmers, while across the world, we know that 80% of the farmers are smallholders and who produce up to 80% of the food that the world depends on. So I wanted to find out from your side, what is then the place of the smallholder farmers who are actually the ones feeding the world? Then this also tied to that is a question on if you are to depend basically on the large-scale farmers, it means you want to focus on very few main foods, like mainly the staples. And that means you are going to continue to neglect other smaller species, including the wild foods, which are also equally or even sometimes more nutritious. So I also wanted to find out from your side, what is the government take on these smaller species, including the wild foods? I know Professor has done a lot of work on traditional leafy vegetables, but we can do more on other species, not just that. Thank you.
Right. Let's take two more and then answer those before we take the next round. There's a...
Hello. My name is Jasper Imungi. I'm from the University of Nairobi. I'm serving as a professor of food chemistry, teaching food science and nutritional courses. Now, I want to make just two comments. The first comment is about the Ministry of Agriculture. I was looking at their strategy that they are talking about the improvement of food and nutritional security in this country. And I found it, and the comment I made was a little weird, because the strategy is advocating increase in maize production, increase in rice production, increase in the conventional production of conventional fruits. And I told them there is no way we are going to improve the food and security, food and nutrition security of this country if we rely on maize. We have to move away from the maize. And it was alluded to by the representative of the Ministry of Agriculture. We should go back to where we were when we were practicing what was described by the Permanent Secretary as primitive farming. When I grew up on millet, sorghum, maize, pigeon peas. Some of these crops are orphaned. Unless we go back to these so that we extend our food, our staple food base, we are not going to get out of this quagmire.
Right.
That's the first one. The second one is also very short. In improving the food and nutritional security for this country, we have to look at the small-scale farmer, like we are saying, and look at countries that are using the small-scale farmer to produce sufficient food and even excess food, surplus food to export. For rice production, for example, and other foods, China is a very typical example. Let's go there and see how they do it, how they are able to produce 7 times the yield of rice like we produce in Mwea. Secondly, the small-scale farmer there, the household in the rural areas, if we want to solve the problem of nutritional security, particularly micronutrients, let's go and look at what they eat. How do they get their micronutrients? And how can we have them get their micronutrients easily from what they have?
Right, thank you very much,
and
sir.
And then I want to end up by saying this. Yesterday I was attending another meeting of food and food security, and this is what I said to them. If I had my powers, what I would do in the rural areas is go and make it a policy that each of the households establishes a vegetable garden where they grow traditional vegetables, and it becomes a policy for everyone, like it is a policy for each one of them to build a toilet.
All right, thank you.
You know what they did, what the audience did.
We really
to
must
me?
answer those
No, let me
ones
just
first.
finish. What the audience did to me when I said that, they laughed at me. They thought I was a foolish professor.
And I'm sure the laughter now is not in agreement with what they were laughing for. But thank you very much. Very, very interesting insights there. I think so many questions were directed to you, Mr. Mwangi. But then I will invite your comments on the other issues. So maybe you can take some.
Thank you very much for the comments, because this one makes us work a bit harder. One, when the PS says we focus on large-scale farming, he is not by any way reducing the importance of the scale farmers of this country. It's just, he mentioned that we can focus on the large-scale farmers. In those farms, we can be able to increase productivity. We are talking of economics of scale. We are also talking about mechanization. This one, we should all agree, we come from villages, and 80% of our farmers are small scale, and they are doing very well. Two, when we talk, we reflect on the amount of GDP that is going to agriculture, sure, it is quite low. It's only maybe Egypt and South Africa who have made it, but we are making steps towards achieving this. The other question on irrigation, Dr. Onyango. Irrigation is one area that we want to focus on. And we are just saying that the private sector can do better in that area. And I remember Moya and the facts that you have said, but we can still do better. On the kind of food we are eating, we all agree that we are putting a lot of pressure on maize. Our livestock are depending on maize. We are also depending on our maize. In fact, it is very rare to have a meal in Kenya without a component of maize. So what is this that we can do? We are talking of blending, yani with those other crops, so that we can move the pressure on maize. When we talk of maybe importing will be better than growing, these are options. We have countries that import because they have minerals and they have the rest. But for Kenya, we need to do it differently so that we can be able to feed the population. Thank you. I'm not busy, but my colleagues can still be able to assist me.
There was a question of benchmarking, which I'll invite either Prof or Dr. Barak to comment on that, on benchmarking with what the other countries are doing in order to diversify their, nutritional kind of foods and their sources of nutrition. Are we doing that even as private sector and development sector? Is it something that we are thinking or are already doing as a strategy as we make food decisions and nutrition decisions for the country?
Let me take it first. Yeah, I think that is a pertinent issue that I know Kenyans, we are very good at benchmarking, and not even outside the country, even within the country. I woke up at 5 o'clock in Naivasha and I was coming here, and the gentleman I was seated with is from Cameroon, and we discussed about West Africa. And hardly do you hear of hunger or issues of food insecurity as much as it is in these other parts of the world. And it is, the answer he gave me is all about diversity on their table, the things they eat. It is not just about maize, it is about diversifying. Some of us think and Professor knows, think that, she would encourage you to eat cassava leaves, sweet potato leaves as vegetables, yet we do not consume it in big numbers. I met a gentleman I know, he's a leader in mushroom production, and how many of us even want to taste mushroom? So as FAO, and as I said, we stand in a good position of global knowledge, global interaction of technologies. It is good to benchmark. And I also don't buy the idea that the PS said that we are only going to focus on large-scale farmers. That is a model of making sure that we can produce to export or produce to meet a certain business model or scale or in terms of supply. But I think small-scale farmers play a big role. You know about KTDA. KTDA is made of large or small-scale farmers. They are all small-scale farmers and they are contributing a huge amount of tea that we export out of this country. So for me, what we need to do is how do we improve the efficiency of production at the small scale. And that's why we talk of even mechanization. And mechanization doesn't mean four-wheel tractor. Doesn't mean, mechanization also means you can process at the farm level, you can store at the farm level, and those are some of the things as FAO we try to use experiences from other places. In terms of fish farming, those things can be produced even people who live on a flat. So in India, in China, in Bangladesh, in Thailand, you go there, these are the people who drive the canning industry. Right. So I think we need to intensify cross fertilization of ideas so that as a country, we do not despise the small-scale farmers, but we make sure that production is optimal for the food gap of this nation.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, just
briefly, I want to comment on a few of them. Rono talked about the composition of this. I think by the virtue that this conference is talking about agri-nutrition and we have these different ministries, I think it's a good start, and we continue to work together because the great philosopher said, let food be your medicine. So you cannot delink food from medicine. I cannot see him there. And secondly, I want to say that for those who have talked, we have enough information to show that indigenous foods, not just vegetables, have a competitive advantage over some of these foods, which we must take advantage of. Just give an example of apart from indigenous vegetables, what we are producing juices from even cactus, these wild plants, and they are very nutritious. So we need to look at that as we move forward. We cannot actually completely delink the indigenous foods that we had as we move forward. We must find a way of complementing them. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We can't take any more questions or comments now, but just remember this entire conference is very open, very consultative, and in the next discussions we'll be continuing with the other questions that I believe are all tied to the same agenda as we move forward of the conference. And I want to thank my panelists. Thank you for your time, for your insights. Professor Abukutsa, Dr. Barak, Mr. Mwangi, thank you very much for your time. So as we break for lunch, just some two announcements. Remember, after our lunch break, we'll be breaking out for the sessions, the two different sessions. Breakout one will be at the Savo Hall. And the topic for this one is strengthening multi-sectoral coordination and partnerships, as well as mutual accountability. This will be at the Savo Hall. That's breakout one. This is to my right, right? Savo Hall is to my right. And then breakout two will be at the Samburu Hall to my left. And the topic for breakout two is effective knowledge management and communications for agri-nutrition. This is at what time? It's right now. We need to agree how long we are taking for lunch. It's 1:45 now. We can give ourselves, is half an hour realistic? No? An hour, okay, so 15 minutes to 3 o'clock, we can then go to our respective breakout sessions. And just a reminder for those with posters to put them up during the break, and those doing the presentations that we can meet at the door to my right, just for a brief, brief before we go for lunch. Thank you very much. I think that's it. We can meet at 2:45. Enjoy your lunch. Oh yes, please remember your lunch vouchers are on your tags. Behind where your name is, the other side is the lunch voucher. Bon appetit.